I died because a stone statue fell on me, and I woke up with both hands wrapped around a pile of rocks that was supposed to decide my future. Before I could understand why the examiner was shouting at me, the stones in my palms twitched like they were trying to remember how to be alive. 100 students stood around the academy testing field. Some held glowing swords. Some had summoned birds made of flame. One boy had a silver wolf at his side, and the thing was so polished it looked richer than everyone in my old neighborhood combined. I had 12 gray stones. The examiner looked at the crystal beside me and frowned. Crafting affinity, no elemental core, no combat imprint. The crowd was already losing interest. I looked down at my hands. They were younger than the hands I remembered. No scars, no office keyboard calluses. My last clear memory was rain, a museum plaza, a cracking sound above me, and a stone hero the size of a truck deciding gravity was stronger than history. Then I had opened my eyes here. The examiner pointed at the stones. Build something. The student before me had failed his first attempt. His summoned falcon collapsed before it left the platform. The examiner had allowed him to try again because his family had donated to the academy. I had heard the whisper before I understood the words. When I asked for the same second attempt, the examiner did not even look at me. One result is enough for a low crafting class. The crowd laughed. That was how my new life began. Not with a prophecy, not with a sword, with public discrimination and 12 rocks. I did what felt natural. 4 stones became legs, 3 became a body, 1 became a neck, 2 made a head. The remaining 2 locked the shape together along the spine. I did not use glue because there was none. I did not use magic because I did not know how. The shape looked like a dog designed by someone who had seen dogs only in bad drawings. It stood up. The laughter stopped for half a second. Then Bramble stepped forward. I learned his name because everyone else said it with the kind of attention people reserved for expensive things. He was the owner of the Silver Wolf. He had ranked near the top of the entrance group. He stared at my stone dog and smiled. Cute. His wolf struck once. My dog exploded into 12 pieces. The stones bounced across the field. Several students laughed harder than before. I looked at the examiner. He had seen Bramble order the attack. He only wrote something on his board. Durability insufficient. Combat value negligible. F rank. My name went to the bottom of the public ranking slate. Zevin, last place. Bramble leaned close enough for me to hear him over the noise. You should thank me. Better to learn now. I gathered the stones one by one. He expected anger. I could tell from the way he waited. I gave him none. The first stone was near his boot. The second was under the platform. The third had rolled into mud. By the time I found the last one, most of the crowd had moved on to watch a girl summon a spear of blue fire. Only one student remained nearby. Elira crouched beside me and picked up a stone. This one was part of the left front leg, she said. I looked at her. How do you know? There is a dirt line where it touched the body. She handed it over. That was the first useful thing anyone had said to me since I died. I returned to the worst dormitory on campus. It stood behind the old workshops, where the walls were stained by years of smoke and rain. My room contained a narrow bed, a chair with one short leg, and a table that leaned like it was tired of existing. The academy had assigned F-rank students to maintenance work until they proved they could earn mission credit. My notice said I would receive 3 copper coins a day carrying scrap from the workshops. 3 copper coins. Dinner in the cheapest dining hall cost 2. I put the 12 stones on the table. That was when I heard a voice. It did not come from the room. It appeared directly inside my head, calm and simple. A class had awakened. Architect of living forms. There was no glowing window, no list hanging in the air. Just understanding, as natural as remembering my own name. The rule was almost stupid in its simplicity. Any complete figure I assembled from stone would come alive if I used no glue, no mortar, and no magical core. That was it. One rule. I stared at the stones. In this world, every real golem required a core. Even the cheap training ones had cracked mana beads in their chests. The academy considered a coreless construct impossible because stone had no reason to move on its own. My class broke exactly that rule. I rebuilt the dog. The moment the 12th stone settled into place, it stood. No flash, no chanting. It simply became alive. I put one finger against its head and pushed. It slid backward across the table, but stayed together. I pushed harder. Its rear leg shifted by less than a finger width. 2 stones rotated against each other. The shape lowered itself. I pushed again. This time, it resisted. I stopped. The dog looked up at me with a face that did not have eyes. I laughed once. Fine, you are already smarter than the chair. The chair immediately collapsed behind me. I decided that was fair. I needed numbers. I placed a small iron weight on the dog's back. 5 pounds. It carried it across the table. Then 10. Its body sagged but held. At 15, one leg slipped and the dog fell apart. I rebuilt it. The second assembly took me 4 minutes. I repeated the test. At 15 pounds, it survived. At 20, the spine broke. I rebuilt it again. 3 minutes and 40 seconds. The stones did not change shape. They did not grow. But each time the dog experienced real stress, they settled into slightly stronger positions. I had one living stone dog made from 12 worthless rocks. It could carry 15 pounds safely. It had cost me nothing. A basic academy practice golem cost 15 silver coins. 1 silver was worth 100 copper. My daily maintenance wage was 3 copper. I did the calculation twice because the answer felt insulting. The academy considered my creation worthless. A weaker commercial version cost 500 days of my assigned labor. I slept very well. The next morning, the workshop supervisor announced a pest bounty. Rock mice had infested the old storage sheds. They ate mineral salts used in alchemy and nested inside wall cavities. The academy paid 1 silver coin for every 10 tails. Most students ignored the job. 1 silver was nothing to combat classes. For me, it was more than a month of maintenance wages. I raised my hand. The supervisor looked at my F rank badge. With what? I pointed down. My stone dog sat beside my boot. The room laughed. Bramall happened to be there collecting materials for his wolf. He saw me and smiled. Try not to let the mice break it. I signed for the job. The first shed smelled like dust, grain, and old chemicals. Illyra was already there because she had taken a gathering assignment in the same area. She watched as I set the dog on the floor. You rebuilt it? Yes. Why? Because 12 stones are cheaper than a new familiar. She smiled. That was enough conversation. The dog entered a gap in the wall. I could not see through it. I could not hear through it. My class gave me no special vision and no control spell. That mattered. I had not gained 10 abilities. I had gained 1 impossible rule. So I used ordinary methods. I scattered flour near the holes. I watched the tracks. I moved boxes to create narrow routes. The stone dog waited at the end. The first rock mouse ran into the trap and hit the dog like a fist-sized hammer. The dog rolled 3 times. It stood back up. The mouse tried to pass. The dog blocked it. I caught the mouse under a basket. Illyra stared at the dog. That impact should have broken the front leg. It did yesterday. We ran the test again. By noon, I had 10 tails, 1 silver coin. By mid-afternoon, 20, 2 silver. Then the pests adapted. They began avoiding the flower lines. So did my dog. I noticed it taking a wider stance near the wall, where the mice hit hardest. Its stones had shifted again after dozens of collisions. A cheap construct was learning without a brain. That was the first real shock, not mine. The supervisor had come to inspect because he expected me to fake the count. He saw the stone dog take a charging rock mouse head-on, slide half a foot, and remain standing. Then he looked at the 27 tails on my cloth. Who enchanted that? No one. Where is the core? There isn't one. He picked up the dog before I could stop him. It went rigid in his hands. He turned it over. No runes, no seams, no mana crystal. His face changed. Do that again. I need mice. He stared at me. Illyra laughed. By sunset, I had 30 tails, 3 silver coins. The supervisor posted the result on the workshop bounty board because all completed jobs had to be public. Zevin, F rank, 30 rock mice. Bramall saw it while half the workshop was still gathered around. He tore the notice down. Pest control is not combat. The supervisor took the paper from his hand and pinned it back up. It is paid work. Leave the board alone. That small moment mattered more than the coins. Yesterday, people had laughed when my dog broke. Today, they looked at it before they looked at me. Bramall did not like that. He stepped into the open yard and called his silver wolf. Let's settle this. One strike again. Students stopped carrying crates. The supervisor frowned. This is a work area. Bramall dropped 5 silver coins on a barrel. If his toy stays together after one hit, the money is his. 5 silver. More than my entire month of survival money. I looked at the dog. It had endured roughly 60 direct collisions that day. Yesterday, Bramall's wolf had shattered it with one casual blow. I had no idea whether it could survive now. That was fine. A useful test with someone else paying for it was good business. I accept. The yard filled quickly. Bramall ordered the wolf forward. It struck. The sound was sharp enough to make several students flinch. My dog flew across the yard, hit a wooden post, and landed upside down. One stone came loose. Only one. The yard went silent. The dog pushed itself upright on 3 legs. Then the loose stone rolled 2 inches across the ground and wedged itself back beneath the chest. I had never seen that happen before. Neither had anyone else. The dog stood. Bramall's face emptied. The supervisor counted slowly. It remained functional. Someone in the crowd laughed, not at me. Bramall kicked the barrel hard enough to hurt his own foot, then walked away while everyone watched. I picked up the 5 silver coins. My resources had gone from 3 copper a day to 8 silver in one afternoon. My construct had gone from breaking under 15 pounds to surviving a direct familiar strike. My public rank had not officially changed, but by dinner, the phrase useless F rank had become a joke people used with a different tone. That night, Elira found me in the cheap dining hall. She put a bowl on my table without asking. The stew was thick with onions, carrots, and chunks of roasted meat. Steam carried the smell of pepper and fat. A piece of dark bread rested against the rim, crisp outside and soft enough inside to soak up the broth. I bought too much, she said. You bought exactly 2 bowls. I made a planning error. I ate anyway. The stone dog sat under the table. When a piece of bread fell, it leaned toward it. I looked down. You do not eat. It kept leaning. Elira covered her mouth, but I saw her laughing. After dinner, we returned to the dorm workshop. I put the dog on the floor and pressed down on its back with both hands. Yesterday, it had sagged under 15 pounds. Now I could lean more of my weight onto it before the legs began to slide. The stones had not become harder. They had simply found better angles after being hit again and again. Elira crouched beside it. So the damage is training it. Not damage, load. There is a difference? If there is not, I am about to become a very bad owner. She looked at the dog. The dog looked at nothing because it had no eyes. I changed the test. I tied a sack of broken metal to a rope and made the dog drag it across the room. 10 pounds, then 15, then 20. At 25, its rear half flattened and 3 stones shot under the bed. Elira stared at me. You just killed it. It is a pile of rocks. One of the stones rolled back out from under the bed and tapped my boot. I stared down at it. Elira slowly looked at me. I think the pile disagrees. I rebuilt the dog and ended the tests for the night. There was a limit between useful stress and stupidity, and I preferred to find it without turning my only asset into gravel. I counted my money before sleeping. 8 silver coins and the 3 copper from my maintenance shift. Enough for food, tools, and a better room if I was careless. Not enough to stop thinking like a poor person. I put 6 silver under a loose board, 1 in my pocket, and spent 1 on a small hammer, a measuring cord, and a canvas sack. The academy had called me a useless craftsman that morning. By night, I had a construct that had survived an elite familiar and earned more in one day than maintenance work paid in months. That was progress I could measure. I turned off the lamp. The stone dog curled beside the bed, although there was no reason for a stone animal to curl. Then the floor beneath it made a dry clicking sound. One rectangular block beside the wall shifted by the width of a fingernail. I sat up. I had never touched that block. The dog turned toward the wall. Illyra had already left, so no one else saw the second block move. I put my hand against the floor. Cold stone. No mana that I could feel. No vibration. For several seconds, nothing happened. Then, from somewhere far below the dormitory, something enormous clicked once in reply. I woke before sunrise and checked the floor first. Nothing moved. I pressed every block near the wall. I measured the gaps with my new cord. I even placed the stone dog on 3 different sections and waited. Nothing. That was useful in its own way. If I could not repeat something, I could not build a plan around it. By breakfast, the workshop bounty board had become more interesting than the food. My name was still at the bottom of the academy ranking. 30 rock mice had earned me money, not status. Kesso made that clear in front of everyone. He was the examiner who had assigned my F rank, a tired man who trusted the categories he enforced. Pest work does not prove combat stability, he said. The workshop yard was full. Students had come to check mission notices. The supervisor stood near the board. Bramble leaned against the wall with his silver wolf beside him. I pointed at the public record. The academy accepted the mission and paid you correctly. I want access to E-rank field jobs. Kesso shook his head. Your construct has no registered core. It cannot be evaluated by normal standards. That sentence explained the entire problem. Normal standards assumed I should not exist. Bramble smiled. So he stays F rank. Kesso ignored him. You may request a stability examination. If your construct passes, I will grant provisional E-rank access. The crowd reacted immediately. Everyone knew the stability examination. Training golems crossed an obstacle lane while carrying weight, endured 3 impacts from a testing hammer, then had to remain functional for 1 minute. A normal beginner construct used a core worth at least 10 silver coins. Mine used 12 roadstones. When? I asked. Tomorrow. Today. Kesso looked at me. You are not prepared. That is why today is useful. Several students laughed. This time the laughter did not feel hostile. Kesso finally nodded. Midday. Bramble pushed away from the wall. I will put 10 silver on the first hammer strike breaking it. I looked at him. You paid 5 yesterday. That was a trick. Then 10 should be safe. The yard made the kind of sound crowds made when they smelled blood without seeing any yet. Bramble's jaw tightened. Fine. I had 3 hours. The test required the construct to carry 50 pounds. My dog had failed at 25. Strength was not my cheat. Design was my problem. Illyra found me behind the workshop sorting through a pile of discarded stone. You look happy, she said. I have 3 hours to double the safe load. That explains it. She sat beside the pile. I was learning that she had a strange relationship with conversation. She could say almost nothing for 10 minutes, then point out the one thing I had missed. I had assumed I needed better stone. She picked up 2 flat pieces and placed them against each other. You keep building legs like bones. They need to move. Do they? I looked at the dog. It walked well enough, but walking was not the test. Carrying weight was. I rebuilt the rear legs shorter and wider. The dog became uglier. It also carried 30 pounds. I changed the shoulders, 35. I replaced 1 long spine stone with 2 overlapping flat pieces, 40. At 45, it collapsed. I rebuilt it. Again. The important part was not only the shape I chose. Every real attempt placed stress on the stones. The dog adjusted inside my design. A rear foot rotated. A shoulder wedge sank deeper. A body stone that had slipped outward during the first attempt turned inward during the next. By the 7th run, it dragged 45 pounds across 20 yards. At 50, it stood but refused to move. I looked at the sand timer. 1 hour remained. Need another animal? Illyra asked. No. A new figure would start with no experience under load. The dog was weak, but it was a veteran. That word sounded ridiculous for 12 rocks. It was still true. I tied 40 pounds behind it and sent it up the steep service ramp behind the forge. It reached the top, then down, then up again. On the 5th climb, the left rear leg broke apart. I rebuilt it. The stones felt easier to place than before, but I assumed my hands had simply learned the pattern. On the 10th climb, it carried 50 pounds, slowly, 1 step at a time, but it moved. At midday, almost 200 students surrounded the stability lane. That number surprised me until I saw the betting slips. Apparently, my humiliation had become an academy sport. The official course was 50 yards long, broken stairs, loose gravel, a narrow beam, a shallow water trench, then the hammer frame. Kesso inspected every stone personally. He used a mana lens over the body twice. No core, he said. The words moved through the crowd. Bramble folded his arms. He hid something else. Kesso looked at him. If I cannot find it, neither can you. That was the first time I saw Bramble lose support from someone he expected to have automatically. The supervisor placed a 50-pound block into the harness. My dog sank lower. A few students laughed. Illyra stood near the finish line. She did not cheer. I liked that. Kesso raised his hand. Begin. The dog moved, slowly. The silver wolf could have crossed the lane in seconds. My construct looked like a small, angry table dragging a tombstone. It climbed the broken stairs. One front stone slipped. The crowd inhaled. The stone rotated under pressure and locked against the next one. The dog continued. People had seen golems compensate through magic. They had never seen raw stone adjust itself. At the loose gravel, the dog widened its rear stance. Kesso leaned forward. Bramble stopped smiling. The dog reached the beam. This was the worst section. The beam was only a hand wider than its body. The 50-pound block pulled sideways. The dog slipped. Half the crowd shouted at once. One rear leg dropped off the beam. The body twisted. For a second, I thought it was finished. Then the stones along the spine shifted into a curved line. The dog lowered its center of mass, dragged the rear leg back onto the beam, and continued. Kesso looked at me. You did not command that. No. You cannot? No. That answer disturbed him more. The dog crossed the water trench and reached the hammer frame. The harness came off. The first test hammer weighed 20 pounds and swung from shoulder height. Bramble put 10 silver coins on the judge's table. First hit. I placed 10 of my own beside them. The crowd became very quiet. The hammer swung. It struck the dog in the side. The body shifted 6 inches. Nothing fell off. The crowd exploded. Someone behind me shouted Bramble's name and laughed. His face turned red. That was not full force. Kesso checked the mechanism. It was. The second hammer fell from higher. The dog lost 1 shoulder stone. Its body dropped, but 3 legs remained stable. It stayed upright. The third hammer was the real test. 35 pounds, higher arc, enough to crack poor construction. I knew the dog would not survive. Bramble knew it too. He recovered his smile. Enjoy the 10 silver while it lasts. The hammer struck. My dog shattered. 12 stones scattered across the test circle. The crowd roared. Bramble laughed once, sharp and relieved. Kesso raised a hand. The construct failed structural continuity. Then the supervisor interrupted. The rules allow repair. The yard went quiet again. Kesso looked at the test sheet. He nodded. 1 minute. If it becomes functional before the sand expires, it may continue. Bramble's smile faded. I had rebuilt the dog many times that morning. My best time had been over 2 minutes. I stepped into the circle anyway. The timer turned. I grabbed the spine stone first. Before my hand reached the second piece, it rolled toward me. I froze for half a heartbeat. Another stone tipped onto its flat side. Then another. They were not moving randomly. They were presenting themselves in order. My hands followed. Back legs, body, shoulder, neck, head. The arrangement felt less like building and more like closing a tool I had opened 100 times. 30 seconds, the supervisor called. I placed the 10th stone. The 11th was already touching my knee. I set it into the spine. The last stone rolled against my boot. I locked it in place. The dog stood. The supervisor stared at the timer. 41 seconds. For a moment, no one reacted. Then the entire yard erupted. Students pushed closer to see the stones. Someone shouted that I had used magnetism. Someone else shouted that stone was not magnetic. A third person shouted that this was exactly why no one should listen to the second person during alchemy class. Kesso stepped into the circle. Scatter it again. No. His eyes narrowed. Why? Because the test is not finished. The supervisor made a choking sound that might have been a laugh. Kesso looked at the 1-minute survival marker. He stepped back. Continue. The dog remained standing. The examination was complete. Provisional E rank. The ranking slate in the yard changed before the crowd dispersed. My name moved off the bottom line for the first time. Not high, not impressive, but no longer last. Bramall stared at the 10 silver coins he had lost. I picked them up. He spoke quietly. You knew it could repair that fast. No. That answer made him angrier than a lie would have. He looked at the dog, then at the students around us. They are cheering because you got lucky. I counted the coins into my pouch. Then stopped paying me to test my luck. The crowd heard. The laughter followed him all the way out of the yard. I had expected satisfaction. What I felt was calculation. Yesterday, reconstruction had taken minutes. Today, after repeated real destruction and repair, the same 12 stones had begun helping me return them to their familiar places. The class had not given me faster hands. The construct remembered its own shape. That changed logistics completely. A normal golem traveled as a full body. Mine traveled as a sack of rocks. I spent 2 silver on better canvas bags, leather cord, and a proper measuring tool. Then I accepted my first E-rank field job. The assignment sounded simple. A storage tunnel beneath the eastern kitchens had partially collapsed. Small mud lizards were nesting inside and spoiling sacks of root vegetables. The academy paid 6 silver for clearing the tunnel, and another 4 if the stored food could be recovered without major damage. 10 silver total. Bramall's silver wolf could kill every lizard in seconds. It was too large to enter the damaged tunnel. My ugly dog fit perfectly. The kitchen workers became my witnesses. That mattered, because no victory in the academy stayed real unless someone else saw it. I used the same method as the mice. No magical vision, no remote commands. I tied a thin cord around the dog's rear body stone. 1 pull meant stop. 2 meant return. 3 meant push forward. It was crude. It worked. The first lizard bit the dog's front leg and lost a tooth. The second tried to drag it into a crack. The dog braced itself against both walls and refused to move. The kitchen workers watched from the tunnel mouth. By the 5th lizard, they were taking bets on which one would regret its decision fastest. Then a support board shifted. A sack of turnips began sliding toward the opening. The dog abandoned the lizard, moved under the sack, and held it long enough for 2 workers to pull it free. I had not ordered that. Again, the construct had adapted to pressure and purpose through experience. Not intelligence in the human sense. Something simpler. It had learned what keeping things from falling felt like. We recovered 14 sacks of vegetables. The kitchen foreman signed for the full 10 silver. Then he added a meal voucher because the turnips were worth more than the academy had expected to save. My resources now totaled 26 silver after expenses. 1 day earlier, I had been worried about buying dinner. My status had moved from F-rank maintenance labor to provisional E-rank field access. My strength was still 1 small construct, but it could survive hits that destroyed it yesterday, rebuild in less than a minute, and improve its own balance under real stress. That evening, Illyra used the meal voucher before I could trade it for anything practical. She took me to a kitchen side room where the workers ate after service. They gave us roasted chicken skin crisp with salt, soft potatoes crushed under gravy, and a bowl of turnips cooked with butter until they tasted much better than anything called a turnip had a right to taste. The dog sat beside my chair. A kitchen worker placed a tiny empty plate in front of it. The dog lowered its stone head toward the plate. Everyone laughed. "You are encouraging it," I said. Elira tore bread in half. "It has earned dinner. It cannot eat." "That sounds like a design flaw," I looked at her. She kept a straight face for almost 3 seconds. After the meal, she followed me to the workshop yard. I scattered the dog deliberately. 12 stones rolled across the ground. I turned the sand timer. This time, I did not touch them immediately. 2 stones shifted, then 4. They did not assemble themselves. They could not climb or stack without a complete living form, but they rolled and tipped toward familiar orientations, reducing the work my hands had to do. I rebuilt the dog in 34 seconds. Second attempt, 31. Third attempt, 29. Elira wrote the times in chalk on the wall. "Your hands are not getting that much faster." "No, the stones are." "Yes." She looked at the canvas bags I had bought. Then she understood the same thing I had. "You could carry 10 of them." "If I can afford the time to train 10. "You do not need 10 dogs." I looked at the pile of unused stone behind the workshop. No. I needed shapes built for different jobs. That was when the supervisor arrived with a sealed mission slip. He handed it to me. "Your E-rank access was noticed." "By whom?" "Kesso." That was not encouraging. I opened the slip. An abandoned quarry outside the academy boundary had reported missing survey workers. The official search team could not enter several narrow cracks because of unstable stone. They wanted a small construct that did not breathe, did not bleed, and could be rebuilt if crushed. The pay was 20 silver. Elira read over my shoulder. "That sounds terrible." "It pays 20 silver. That does not make it less terrible." "It makes it exactly 20 silver less terrible." The next morning departure time was written at the bottom. I folded the slip. Then I noticed the material note. The quarry was famous for one thing. A single ancient black boulder had broken there years ago, leaving hundreds of fist-sized fragments across the lower cut. The academy wanted me to search among them. My stone dog, still sitting at my feet, turned toward the eastern wall. Every loose stone in its body clicked at the same time. The quarry dropped through uneven black stone levels, crossed by broken rails and rain-filled pits. The search team waited near the upper cut. So did Kesso. When he saw me carrying one canvas bag over my shoulder, he looked behind me as if he expected the real equipment to arrive later. "That is all?" "The dog is in the bag." Several workers stared. Elira coughed into her hand. Kesso closed his eyes for a moment. "You are carrying your construct as loose material." "It is lighter when it is not walking." That sentence should not make sense. But it does. The mission was worse than the notice had said. 3 survey workers had disappeared the previous afternoon while mapping cracks in the lower quarry. A tremor had sealed 2 passages. The rescue team had found 1 helmet and a broken lantern near the western wall, but no bodies. Kesso had taken command because the academy considered the site unstable. His reason was not pride alone. If a student died on an E-rank mission he had approved, the academy would investigate him. I understood that. I also understood the other part. He wanted to see whether my class was real before it embarrassed his judgment again. He gathered everyone around a chalk map on a crate. The western crack is the most likely route. Mana residue from the survey lamps continues 30 yards inside. We search there first. No one enters the lower black cut. The old boulder fragments shift after rain. I looked toward the lower cut. Hundreds of dark stones lay across it. The ancient boulder had once been large enough to fill a house. Quarry records said a lightning strike split it decades earlier. The fragments had been considered poor construction material because they fractured unpredictably when carved. For me, carving was unnecessary. I asked Kesso one question. "How long has the Western team been searching?" "Since dawn." "How far?" "Almost 60 yards. "And no sign of the missing workers?" "No." I looked at the rain tracks. 3 sets of boot prints led down toward the lower cut. They were faint, partly washed away, but they existed. Kesso had seen them too. The lower route is unstable, he said before I spoke. A rescue attempt that creates more victims is not a rescue. That was reasonable, so I did not argue. I opened the bag and assembled the dog. 29 seconds. The workers reacted more strongly to that than I expected. News traveled, but seeing 12 dead stones organize under my hands was different from hearing about it. One worker touched his own expensive survey golem and looked offended on its behalf. I sent the dog down the edge of the lower cut. Kesso stepped in front of me. I said no entry. I am not entering. You are sending a registered construct. It is not registered. His eye twitched. That is not helping your case. The dog reached the field of black fragments. I stopped it with one pull of the cord. Then I walked down only as far as the marked safe boundary and picked up 9 pieces of the ancient boulder. Kesso watched carefully. What are you doing? Testing material. I had learned enough from the dog to avoid building shapes just because they looked familiar. I needed low bodies that could fit cracks. 3 stones made a crude lizard. 1 long piece for the body, 2 small pieces angled beneath it as front and rear supports. It was not anatomically correct. It was complete enough for my class. The little figure moved. The crowd behind me murmured. I built a second from 3 more fragments, then a third. 3 black stone lizards stood on the wet ground. They were weaker than the dog. New forms had no training. One tipped over trying to climb a fist-sized ridge. I set it upright. I sent the first toward the western side of the cut and the second toward the east. The third stayed beside me. I had no remote sight. No magical map appeared in my head. For the first minute, the test seemed useless. Then the third lizard rotated. Its head pointed west. I moved the first lizard farther west. The third turned with it. I stopped. I sent the second east. The third shivered, then changed its body angle halfway between the 2 directions. I stared at it. Elira crouched beside me. They know where the others are. Kesso heard her. That is impossible without a communication core. I picked up the third lizard and turned it south by hand. The moment I released it, it twisted back toward the others. Same material, same destroyed boulder, different living forms. They were aware of one another's position, not through me, through the stone. That was the third consequence of the same impossible rule. The workers began talking all at once. One said survey teams paid 20 silver for paired direction crystals. Another said military scouts used devices worth 10 times that. A third asked how much one of my lizards cost. I looked at the ground. 3 rocks. He stopped talking. Kesso did not. Range? Unknown. Accuracy? Unknown. Maximum number? Unknown. He folded his arms. You have discovered a property you do not understand in an unstable quarry. Yes. And your response is to use it immediately. Yes. Elira looked at him. He is consistent. I sent the western lizard into a narrow crack. The third remained beside me, pointing toward it. The crack bent out of sight. The third lizard rotated slowly as its sibling changed direction underground. I marked the angles on the quarry map. For the first time, we could track a scout we could not see. It was not a perfect map. We had direction, not distance. So I used 2 stationary lizards. I built 3 more from the same boulder. One stayed at the safe boundary. One went with Elira to the opposite side of the upper cut. The others became scouts. With 2 fixed observers watching which way their bodies pointed, we could estimate where a moving scout was by crossing the directions on the map. No magic, just geometry and very confused rocks. The first scout followed the western crack for 70 yards and stopped. The 2 stationary lizards pointed to the same underground location. Kesso marked it. That is where the mana trace ends. The rescue team had already searched there. I pulled the cord twice. The scout returned. The second scout entered a narrow crack on the eastern side of the lower cut. Kesso objected immediately. That passage is below the unstable shelf. The construct weighs less than 5 pounds. If it triggers a slide, we lose 3 rocks. His expression told me he hated how difficult that argument was to defeat. I sent the scout deeper. 20 yards, 30, 40. the stationary lizards turned. At 50 yards, one began tapping its front piece against the ground. Click, click, click. I had never taught it that. I pulled once. The scout stopped. The tapping stopped. I pushed the scout forward with 3 pulls. The tapping began again. Something was happening underground. I looked at Kesso. I want permission to enter the lower passage. No. The workers reacted. He raised his voice before they could argue. We do not know what the signal means. We do know the shelf can collapse. I will not send students into a hole because 3 stones learned to tap. He was protecting his responsibility. I respected that. I also looked at the mission clock. The missing workers had spent a cold night underground. If injured, they did not have unlimited time. Then send no students. I took off my academy coat. Kesso stared at me. You are a student. I am the contractor on the mission. That is not how categories work. It was worth trying. The supervisor from the academy workshop had come with the supply cart. He stepped forward. I will go. Kesso turned on him. You are not trained for unstable excavation. I have repaired academy tunnels for 18 years. That changed the argument. 2 quarry workers volunteered as well. Now Kesso had witnesses, trained adults, and a trackable scout. He adjusted. Fine. I lead. Zevin stays directly behind me. If I say retreat, everyone retreats. That was the moment I stopped seeing him as only the man who had put me last. He could be wrong and still walk into danger himself. We entered the eastern crack. The dog went first. A black lizard followed 10 feet ahead of us. Outside, Elira watched the stationary markers and called directions through a speaking tube the workers had laid along the first section. The tunnel narrowed quickly. At 30 yards, I had to turn sideways. At 40, the ceiling dropped. At 50, we found blood on the stone. Kesso stopped. The western search had found none. He looked at me once. Then we continued. The scout tapped somewhere ahead. The sound echoed through the crack. We reached a split. Left tunnel wide. Right tunnel barely large enough for the dog. The blood trail went left. Kesso pointed left. The black lizard beside my boot twisted toward the right. Its sibling was in there. I listened. Nothing. Then 3 faint knocks came from behind the right wall. Human knocks. Kesso's face changed. Right. The passage had collapsed after the survey workers entered. The blood trail continued left because one injured worker had tried to find another exit, then doubled back through a gap we could not see from our side. My dog entered first. A stone shifted under its front leg. The ceiling groaned. Everyone froze. The dog lowered itself. Its body spread into the load the way it had learned under sacks and hammer strikes. A falling slab settled across its back. The construct held. Not forever, long enough. Kesso pointed. Brace there. The workers shoved timber supports beneath the slab. We opened a gap. Beyond it, 3 people were alive. One had a broken leg. One had a deep cut along the shoulder. The third was exhausted, but conscious. The first thing one of them said was not thank you. He looked at my dog under the slab and whispered, Is that made of roadstone? Yes. He started laughing. Then he started crying. We carried them out one at a time. The quarry entrance had filled while we were underground. Students from the academy had arrived after hearing a rescue was in progress. Workers stood on the upper ledges. The Western search team returned just as we emerged. Kesso came out first, then the injured workers, then me. My dog came last after the braces were set. The moment it reached daylight, one rear stone fell off. The crowd saw it. The dog turned around, nudged the stone with its head, and waited for me. The reaction was louder than any tournament cheer I had heard at the academy. People understood simple things. 3 missing workers had gone in. 3 living workers came out. The F-rank stone toy had found them. Kesso stood in front of the mission clerk while the entire quarry watched. He could have described the rescue as a team success and hidden the embarrassing part inside procedure. He did not. The eastern route was identified by Zevin's constructs. The tracking method was his. My initial search priority was wrong. He looked at me. Your entrance evaluation was also incomplete. That was not an apology. From him, it was more expensive than one. The clerk updated my field authorization from Provisional E to full D rank for scouting and construction missions. The Academy paid the original 20 silver. The quarry company added a 30 silver rescue bonus. The families of the workers tried to give me another 20. I refused that part. They had already paid Academy insurance fees. I was not going to charge frightened people twice because their relatives survived. The quarry company could afford it. My total resources rose to 76 silver after travel costs and supplies. 3 days earlier, I had been assigned 3 copper a day. My strength had changed too. 1 trained dog was useful. 6 linked black scouts changed the scale of what I could search. My status changed fastest of all. By the time we returned to the academy, someone had rewritten the public ranking board with a piece of chalk beside my name. Corliss Scout. Kesso erased the words himself. Then he moved my official marker upward by 11 places. The students watching made more noise for that than I did. Bramble stood near the back of the crowd. He did not challenge me. That was how I knew the first enemy was finished. He had wanted to protect his place above me because ranking controlled access to elite training. Each time he attacked my reputation, he had believed he was defending something real. Now fighting me publicly only made my number rise. He understood the economics. That evening, the rescued survey crew sent food to the old workshop. Not expensive food, good food. A pot of beef cooked slowly with dark onions until the meat separated under a spoon. Thick noodles covered in butter. Cabbage fried at the edges until it turned sweet. Fresh rolls wrapped in cloth to keep them warm. Illyra and I ate on overturned crates because my room had only 1 chair and the chair was still losing its war against gravity. The dog lay beside the stove. The 6 black lizards arranged themselves in a rough circle. Illyra noticed first. They are all facing inward, each one pointed toward the others. I moved one across the room. The circle changed. I carried another outside. The remaining 5 rotated toward the door. We tested range across the workshop yard, then across the dorm road, then from opposite sides of the dining hall. No failure. I stopped before we turned dinner into a research expedition. Illyra handed me a roll. You are smiling. I am calculating. That is your version of smiling. I ate the roll. After dinner, I inspected every black lizard for damage. One had chipped its body stone in the quarry. I replaced nothing. Instead, I searched the canvas sack until I found the chipped fragment and wedged it back into the original figure. Illyra watched me. You could build a new one in a minute. I could, but you keep the damaged pieces. They know the shape. That is the practical answer. It is the answer. She did not push. That was another thing I liked about her. A knock came at the workshop door. A woman stood outside holding an old iron key and a stack of dusty papers. Her name was Vela. She was the last active member of the Academy Builders Club. I knew the name because it was written on the club closure notice behind her. She looked at the dog, then at the 6 lizards, then at me. You made the quarry rescue constructs? Yes. Our club has 3 members on paper and 1 in reality. The Academy closes us tomorrow if we cannot show active project value. I looked at the key. What does the club own? Her expression changed immediately. Not offended, interested. An old construction hall, 2 storage rooms, hand tools, a stone yard. No budget. How much stone? Too much. That was the correct amount. I took the key. We can discuss membership tomorrow. Vela smiled for the first time. After she left, I put the 6 black lizards into 2 groups on opposite sides of the room. They turned toward one another as expected. Then all 6 moved at once. Not toward each other, toward the western wall. Illyra and I went still. I picked up 1 lizard and rotated it east. It turned back west. All 6 pointed in exactly the same direction. The academy stood west of the old workshop. More precisely, the oldest central building stood there. The 6 creatures had been made from fragments of 1 shattered black boulder in a quarry miles away. Yet something inside the academy was pulling their attention, as if another member of their stone family was already alive there. The Builders Club Hall looked like a building that had survived several wars by refusing to notice them. 1 window was boarded, half the roof tiles were different colors, and the front door came free in Vela's hands when she tried to open it. "That is new," she said. Inside, dust-covered long work tables and old stone samples filled the shelves. The Academy wanted 1 approved project and 4 active members before sunset. Otherwise, the hall would be reclaimed for storage. Vela put the iron key on the table. "We have 1 real member." Illyra walked in behind me. "2. I looked at her. "You do not have to join." "I know." That was the whole conversation. We still needed 2 more active members. That problem solved itself after I opened the doors and started unloading stones. The quarry rescue drew students to the hall. I offered 1 week of tool access for 1 hour of cleaning. 9 entered, 4 signed temporary membership forms, and the club met its membership requirement in 37 minutes. The second requirement was harder. We needed a project. Vela showed me the Academy request board. The cheapest approved job was repairing a covered walkway between 2 lecture buildings. 3 stone columns had shifted after winter frost. Licensed builders had estimated the work at 1 gold and 40 silver because the roof needed to be supported while the columns were reset. 1 gold equaled 100 silver. The club treasury contained 11 silver and 6 copper. I had 76 silver personally. Paying for a professional core scaffold would consume almost everything I owned. So I asked a different question. "How heavy is the roof section?" Vela checked the old plans. "About 800 pounds across the damaged span." I looked at the stone yard behind the hall. Hundreds of pieces. Most were too small for columns. Perfect for me. I spent the morning building, not dogs. Dogs were good at moving and blocking. I needed weight distribution. I built squat, 4-legged forms with broad backs. They looked like turtles made by someone who strongly disliked circles. Each used 16 stones. The first could hold about 40 pounds before its legs spread. I trained it under stacked sandbags. 40, 50, 60. At 70, it collapsed. I rebuilt it. The second run reached 70, then 80. By late morning, the veteran support form could hold 90 pounds safely. A new one, built with the same design, could hold only about 50. The design came from me. The stability came from experience. I built 11 more. Training 12 individually would take too long. So I arranged them beneath 1 wooden platform and loaded the platform with stone blocks. The first test used 400 pounds. 3 new supports collapsed. The others shifted. The platform tilted hard enough to send everyone jumping backward. A block slid off and smashed through an old stool. Vela watched the stool die. "We had that for 20 years. "It was already broken." "It had seniority." Illyra pushed the next block onto the platform. Again. The second test reached 500 pounds. Only 1 support collapsed. The third reached 600. All 12 held. Students outside the hall started counting aloud. By noon, we reached 800 pounds. 12 ugly stone supports stood beneath the platform. None had a core. The total stone had cost us nothing because it came from club scrap. The leather straps and measuring cord cost 3 silver. A standard temporary golem scaffold for the walkway would rent for 80 silver per day. I wrote both numbers on the project form. 3 silver, 80 silver. Vela read them twice. "The licensed builders are going to hate you." "They can lower their prices." "That will make them hate you more." She was right. Raiden arrived before we moved a single support to the walkway. He wore the gray coat of the City Builders Association and carried a metal inspection rod. 2 licensed workers came with him, along with enough curious students to turn the club yard into a public hearing without chairs. He was not angry when he introduced himself. He was careful. That immediately made him more serious than Bramall. "I have read the quarry report," he said. "Your constructs are useful." "Thank you." "They are also unlicensed load-bearing devices." Vela stepped beside me. "The club has Academy authorization for supervised student projects." "Not for autonomous supports." "They are not autonomous," I said. Raiden looked at the 12 stone forms. One of them moved when I approached. "It dislikes the rod." The nearest support shifted away from his inspection tool. Several students laughed. Raiden did not. This is exactly my concern. A support should not have preferences. A living support that walked away at the wrong moment could kill people. I had been thinking about cost. Raiden was thinking about liability. We were both right. He placed the inspection rod on the table. The association does not care whether your core is visible, hidden, or non-existent. If these devices carry structural loads, they must meet the city stability standard. What standard? Static load, impact load, failure behavior, and controlled release. Vela went pale. Students whispered around us. If we failed publicly, the club would lose the walkway project and probably the hall. Raiden continued. I can prohibit the test and close the project now. Instead, I am offering inspection today. He was not trying to erase me. He wanted the method tested before someone trusted it under a real roof. How much is the inspection? 20 silver. I stopped respecting that part. The crowd laughed when they saw my face. Raiden finally smiled. Licensed work is expensive. I paid the 20 silver. My personal resources dropped to 56. The club had one afternoon to prove itself. The city test took place at the damaged walkway, because moving the roof load twice would be pointless. By then, the audience had doubled. Mission workers came. Students came. Kesso came and stood near the back with his arms folded. Even Bramall appeared. He stayed quiet. Raiden brought one professional support golem for comparison. It was a broad iron frame around a stone body with a blue core in the center. Rental value, 80 silver per day. Replacement value, nearly 4 gold. My 12 supports had cost 3 silver in straps and 1 morning of labor. Raiden explained the test so every witness could hear. The roof section weighs approximately 800 pounds. The temporary system must carry 1,000 for 10 minutes. Then it must survive a lateral impact equivalent to a 200-pound swing. Finally, the load must be lowered in a controlled manner. Vela whispered, "We tested 800. I heard. We did not test 1,000. I also heard that." Illyra looked at me. "You are doing the calculating face. I need more supports." We had 12 trained enough to trust. I had stone for more. I assembled 4 new ones beside the walkway. Students watched my hands. The fastest new support took 48 seconds because the shape was simpler than the dog. 4 took less than 4 minutes. Raiden inspected each. "No cores," he said quietly. The phrase spread through the audience. 16 supports moved beneath the temporary beam. We lifted the roof using screw jacks, then transferred the weight. 800 pounds. The forms settled. Some widened their stance. Others shifted closer together where the beam sagged. Raiden noticed. "Did you command those movements?" "No. That remains a problem. Only if they move away from the load. That is not how safety rules work." He was still right. We added 200 pounds of test blocks to the roof frame. 1,000 total. The 4 new supports began shaking first. I watched their feet. They were learning under a load much heavier than anything they had experienced. 1 stone slid outward. A student gasped. The support beside it moved closer. Their bodies touched. Not merged. Not one creature. Just 2 complete forms using each other as braces. Then a third did the same. A line of living supports tightened beneath the beam. The load distributed across them. The shaking stopped. Raiden's professional workers stepped closer. One whispered, "They are forming a scaffold." Everyone heard him. 10 minutes passed. Static test complete. Now the impact. A 200-pound timber weight hung from a chain beside the temporary beam. Raiden pulled it back. Vela looked like she wanted to lie down somewhere quiet and become part of the floor. Illyra stood beside the emergency jack. If the supports failed, we would lower the roof immediately. Raiden released the timber. It struck the side of the scaffold. The entire line of stone creatures shifted. 2 exploded into loose pieces. The roof dropped an inch. The audience screamed. Then the neighboring supports moved under the gap. The beam stopped. No command, No core calculation. They had experienced group load all morning. Now they applied it under impact. I moved immediately. The 2 destroyed supports had trained with the others for hours. Their stones were veterans. Pieces rolled toward familiar orientations before I reached them. I rebuilt the first in 36 seconds, the second in 33. They walked back under the beam. The roof returned to level. The crowd broke into shouting. Kesso was laughing. I had never heard him laugh before. Bramah looked at him as if this violated Academy law. Raiden raised both hands. Quiet, the test is not complete. Controlled release remained. That was the part I had not practiced at all. A normal scaffold obeyed a command and lowered by fixed increments. My supports understood pressure, not instructions. If I pulled them out one by one, the roof might shift unpredictably. I looked at the professional support golem, then at my 16 living forms. I did not need a new ability. I needed a procedure. I placed the screwjacks under the beam until they barely touched. Then I removed weight from the living supports in small amounts. As pressure decreased, they began standing taller. I tapped the first one twice and pulled it backward. The others took the changing load. Then the second, then the third. We transferred the roof onto the jacks gradually. No sudden drop, no damaged stone. Controlled release complete. Raiden walked the length of the walkway in silence. The audience waited. He inspected the beam, the jacks, and every support. Then he returned to the center. These devices passed today's temporary load standard. The club yard exploded in cheers. Vela sat down on the ground. Illyra clapped once. I did the important part. How long is the approval valid? Raiden stared at me. 30 days, supervised use only. And the walkway contract? He looked at the project clerk. The clerk raised the signed sheet. Approved. The Academy paid 1 gold and 40 silver. After costs, the club kept 1 gold and 5 silver. My personal funds stayed at 56 silver because the project money belonged to the club. For the first time, I controlled resources larger than my own pocket, and the hall had a reason to stay open. My strength had changed from 1 veteran and 6 scouts to a working group of 16 load-trained forms, plus the dog and quarry lizards. My status changed in a way the ranking slate could not show. Licensed builders had publicly certified my coreless constructs for real structural work. Raiden had come to stop an unsafe project. Instead, he signed the approval himself in front of hundreds of witnesses. His own rules had proved me useful in front of everyone. He understood that too. As the crowd dispersed, he spoke quietly. You realize what happens if this scales. Core prices fall. More than that. Half the city's construction economy assumes useful autonomous labor requires mana cores. I know. No, you know the number. You do not know the people attached to it. That was the first warning from an enemy I took seriously. Raiden picked up his inspection rod. If you keep doing this, someone above me will come. When? He looked toward the Academy tournament banners being raised over the central road. Soon. The Builders Club celebration that night cost 6 silver, and Vela complained about every coin until the food arrived. Then she stopped complaining. We cooked in the hall because the old forge chimney still worked. There was a wide iron pan full of sliced potatoes browned in chicken fat, onions cooked dark at the edges, and pieces of sausage that cracked when bitten. Someone brought a pot of bean soup with smoked meat. Illyra found honey cakes from a bakery near the south gate and claimed they were a necessary structural expense. Vela demanded to know which part of the structure required honey. The members. That argument passed without inspection. The stone dog lay under the table. One of the support forms had somehow positioned itself beside the stove. You are made of rock, I told it. You cannot be cold. It moved 1 inch closer to the heat. The room laughed. I had spent 4 days in this world. On the first day, I had eaten cheap stew in a dorm room with 1 broken chair. Now 12 people were eating in a club hall that had nearly been closed that morning. Most of them still did not know what my class truly did. They only knew the results. That was enough. After everyone left, Elira helped me stack the cleaned plates. You gave the club the whole contract payment. It was a club contract. You paid the inspection from your own money. I will reimburse it after we have operating reserves. She looked at me for a long second. You really do think like a person who expects everything to disappear tomorrow. My hands stopped. That was closer than most people came to asking about the life before this one. I put another plate on the stack. Things fall. She looked toward the stone dog. And you rebuild them. I did not answer. For once, I did not have a number that improved the sentence. The knock on the hall door came near midnight. Kesso stood outside with an official tournament envelope. The Academy changed the construction division rules after today's inspection. That sounds dangerous. It probably is. He handed me the envelope. The annual tournament included familiar combat, magical engineering, and team defense. The Builders Club had been invited into the defense event as a special entry. The prize was 3 gold for first place, 300 silver. More important, the final defense match would be held in the central arena before the entire academy and visiting city officials. Vela read the invitation over my shoulder. This could fund the club for a year. I looked at Kesso. Why us? Because the Capital Association requested a live demonstration of your method. Raiden's warning had taken less than 6 hours. Kesso turned the envelope over. A second seal was pressed into the wax. The Capital Builders Authority. Below it was the name of their representative, Orens. Kesso's expression had no humor left. He is bringing their championship construct. What is it? A dragon. I looked across the hall at 16 cheap stone supports, 6 black lizards, and 1 dog shaped like a piece of angry furniture. Vela whispered, "How large a dragon?" Kesso looked through the open door toward the arena. Large enough that they are reinforcing the stadium before it arrives. At that moment, every black quarry lizard in the hall turned toward the Central Academy building. A heartbeat later, the stones in the club's western wall clicked in answer. The dragon arrived at sunrise on a wagon pulled by 8 draft beasts. Dark red stone covered an iron skeleton, and a blue-white core the size of a human head burned behind its ribs. It weighed nearly 2 tons and cost 80 gold. My personal fortune was 56 silver. Orens walked beside it, dressed more like an engineer than an official. After checking the support ramps himself, he came directly to our staging area. Behind me stood 32 coreless forms, the veteran dog, 6 black quarry lizards, 16 load train supports, and 9 new runners I had assembled before dawn from arena repair stone. The new runners were weak, but all 32 constructs used no mana cores and less than 5 silver in leather and cord. Orens counted slowly. 32. Yes. Raiden's report said 16. I had a morning. He looked at me for several seconds, then he laughed once. I understand why he sounded tired. Orens touched the veteran dog with the toe of his boot. It moved away from him. He looked down. Does it dislike officials? It has good instincts. Elira made a sound behind me that might have been a cough. Orens smiled, then became serious. I am not here because the capital hates cheap construction. Cheap construction makes cities possible. I am here because an autonomous load-bearing object with no detectable power source is a regulatory nightmare. That is a long title for a rock. And if the rock decides to leave a bridge? That is why we test. He nodded. Good. Then we agree on the important part. He explained the stakes. If my entry passed the tournament defense final, the Capital Authority would grant the Builders Club a 1-year experimental license for supervised coreless construction. The Academy prize for first place was 3 gold. The Capital Authority would add another 2 gold research grant. 5 gold total, 500 silver. If I failed because of structural instability, all public load-bearing use of my constructs would be suspended until a capital review. Orens promised to announce the terms publicly and control the dragon himself. You say that very calmly, he said. I cannot afford your dragon, so worrying about it is free. He laughed. He was harder to hate than Raiden, which made beating him more important. Almost 4,000 people filled the arena. Students, workshop workers, quarry crews, licensed builders, and the people we had rescued all had seats. Bramble stood with the combat students, Kesso sat beside the judges, Raiden watched from the builders section, Vela gripped the club platform rail, and Illyra waited inside the field boundary as my assistant. The rules were simple. A stone marker stood in the center of the arena. My team had to keep the dragon from touching it for 10 minutes. I could repair destroyed constructs inside a marked work circle. I could not attack Oren's directly. The dragon could destroy anything else on the field. 10 minutes. One 2-ton capital construct against 32 creatures made from scrap. The announcer gave the audience the cost difference. 80 gold against less than 5 silver. The stadium understood the stakes immediately. Oren's raised one hand. The dragon opened its eyes. Blue light filled the carved sockets. The match began. The dragon crossed the first 20 yards faster than anything that heavy should move. I had expected a charge. I had not expected speed. Split. I still had to use ordinary commands because my class gave me no telepathy. The runners moved left and right. The supports formed 2 staggered lines in front of the marker. The veteran dog stayed near me. The 6 quarry lizards spread around the arena as positional anchors. The dragon hit the first line. 4 new runners disappeared under its feet. Not broke, disappeared. Stone fragments shot across the sand. The audience screamed. The dragon reached the supports. The first 2 took the impact together. They had trained under 1,000 pounds. The dragon hit with much more. Both exploded. But the next 4 shifted inward. The line bent instead of collapsing. The dragon lost speed. It stopped 6 yards from the marker. The stadium erupted. First micro-victory. We had stopped the opening charge. The timer passed 1 minute. Oren's changed tactics. The dragon spread its wings. I heard the core before I saw the attack. A high metallic hum. Down! The remaining runners flattened. A wave of compressed air crossed the arena. 3 supports rolled backward. 1 shattered against the boundary wall. The black quarry lizards were too small to catch the full force. 5 remained stable. 1 flipped onto its back and continued pointing toward its siblings upside down. The crowd laughed in the middle of the destruction. Illyra ran to it, turned it upright, and returned to the work circle. "No dignity," she said. "It is a rock lizard. That is not an excuse." 2 minutes. I had already lost 7 complete forms. I started rebuilding. The veteran supports were fast. 35 seconds for the first, 38 for the second. The new runners were slow because their stones had little memory. I ignored them. That was the price of my power. Cheap did not mean equal. Experience could not be purchased in one morning. The dragon attacked again. This time, Oren's aimed for the work circle. He could not strike me directly, but he could force me to move. The dragon's tail swept across the sand. The veteran dog jumped into its path. 12 stones met a tail heavier than a tree trunk. The dog shattered instantly. The crowd gasped. The tail lost only a fraction of speed. It was enough. I stepped backward. The tail passed in front of me. I looked at the 12 scattered stones. They were already rolling. The spine piece turned flat. 2 leg stones came together. I dropped to my knees and rebuilt. 26 seconds. The dog stood. The quarry section began chanting the repair time. Oren's heard them, looked at the dog, and his expression changed. The dragon cost 80 gold because destroying a precision construct was supposed to matter. Destroying mine only created work. At 3 minutes, I had 27 functional forms. At 4 minutes, 29. My repair rate was beginning to match the dragon's destruction rate because it kept hitting veterans. Oren's understood and stopped trying to destroy them individually. He attacked the marker. The dragon jumped. Nearly 2 tons of stone and iron left the ground. The audience stood as one. It came down in the center. I had 6 seconds at most. Stack. We had practiced this only twice. The supports moved first. They were complete living forms. None stopped being itself. But their flat backs and wide legs had been designed to accept weight from other forms. 4 made the base. 4 climbed against them. Runners filled the gaps. The veteran dog wedged beneath the center. Loose arrangement became structure. It was not one giant creature, but a wall made from complete living forms, each holding the next. The dragon landed on it. 6 forms shattered. The rest compressed, shifted their feet, changed their angles, and bent backward under the load. Then the wall stabilized. The dragon slid off. The marker remained untouched. For 1 full second, the stadium made no sound. Then 4,000 people erupted. Vela jumped on the club platform. Kesso forgot to look professional, and even Bramble cheered until he caught me looking. 5 minutes. Halfway. Oren's raised both hands. The dragon's core brightened. Raiden shouted from the side, "That output is above exhibition level." Oren's did not look away from the field. The defense standard allows full registered output. He was right. The dragon opened its mouth. Heat distorted the air. Not real dragon fire. A focused mana furnace. My stone could survive heat better than flesh. The leather cords could not. The blast hit. Straps burned. 3 forms lost their bindings and collapsed. The wall opened. The dragon charged through smoke. I had 14 functional constructs between it and the marker. 6 minutes. Elira grabbed a bucket and threw sand over the burning cords. "Your 5 silver budget is on fire." I noticed. I rebuilt without straps where I could. That forced better stone fitting, slower assembly, stronger contact. The dragon struck again. The first line broke. The second held. 7 minutes. Oren's pressed harder because an easy victory would make the license meaningless. He needed to break my method publicly if it could be broken. I needed the same proof. At 8 minutes, I had 11 forms standing. Half a minute later, 9. Sharp edges had cut my palms, so I wrapped one hand in cloth and kept building while Elira pushed the correct veteran stones toward me. 9 minutes. Oren's gave the dragon everything. Its core screamed. The construct lowered its head and charged directly at the marker. I had 7 supports, the dog, 4 runners, and 6 quarry lizards. 18 forms, not enough for the same wall. So I changed the geometry. Narrow stack. The supports formed a wedge instead of a flat line. The dog locked behind them. The runners braced the sides. The 6 black lizards climbed onto the outer stones, all still aware of one another's positions. They became living alignment points. If one side shifted too far, the lizards turned toward their siblings and gave me a visible warning. The dragon hit. The wedge moved backward 1 yard, 2 yards, 3. The marker stood 4 yards behind us. A support shattered. Another folded. The dog lost its headstone. The wedge kept moving. 3 yards to the marker. 2. The crowd was counting the final seconds. 10. 9. The dragon pushed. A runner broke. 8. 7. The wedge touched the marker's shadow. 6. I saw one support begin to slide outward. A black lizard rotated sharply. I understood. I kicked a loose arena stone under the failing foot. Not a new construct, just a wedge. The support locked. 5. 4. The dragon's core flashed white. 3. The living wall stopped moving. 2. 1. The final bell rang. The dragon's nose stopped less than 1 foot from the marker. The arena became louder than anything I had heard in either life. Oren's lowered his hands. The dragon went still. I sat down on the sand because my legs had finally remembered they were tired. The veteran dog's missing headstone rolled out from beneath the dragon and tapped my boot. I picked it up. Oren's crossed the field while everyone watched. He stopped in front of me. "You passed." "By 1 foot." "1 foot counts." He turned toward the judges. Then he did the thing that destroyed every rumor before it could begin. He announced the result himself. The Corliss construction team met the full capital defense standard. The Builders Club receives experimental authorization for 1 year. The builders argued. The students celebrated. Oren's confirmed the first place award. 5 gold total, 500 silver in prize and research funds. I had begun with 3 copper a day, 1 dog that broke after 1 hit, and the last place on the ranking slate. 5 days later, battered veterans had stopped an 80 gold dragon and a capital official had certified my work before 4,000 witnesses. Then the arena floor moved. Not cracked, moved. One rectangular block slid 6 inches sideways. The crowd quieted in waves. A second block rotated, then a third. Every black quarry lizard turned toward the center of the academy. Kesso stood up. Raiden dropped his inspection rod. Orenz looked at me. "Is that yours?" "No." The central arena wall opened along a seam no one had known existed. There was no mortar inside, no metal brace, no magical core, only perfectly fitted stone. The same rule. Not my construction, someone else's. The movement spread outward. Stadium steps shifted, arches widened their stance, and old towers rotated by inches. Bells rang as students ran for the exits, which widened before they reached them. The academy was making room. I stood. The veteran dog faced the central tower. Every living form I had built did the same. A section of arena floor rose slowly and exposed a buried stone plate. There were words carved into it. Kesso read them first. His face went pale. The academy had been built more than 1,000 years ago by a founder whose class name had been lost from official records. The plate preserved it. Architect of living forms. My class. The founder had assembled one enormous living structure and put generations of students inside it. No glue, no mortar, no core. For 1,000 years, the academy had remained still. Today, repeated impacts from a 2-ton dragon and my living wall had sent real stress through the old foundation. The giant veteran had finally decided its stance was inefficient. A tower moved 3 feet to the left. Somewhere across campus, thousands of people screamed. I stared at the moving stone and understood the last number. My dog had trained for 5 days. The academy had been carrying roofs, towers, storms, earthquakes, and generations of students for more than 1,000 years. If experience made a living form stronger, then I was standing inside the most experienced construct in the country, possibly the world. Orenz looked at his 80 gold dragon, then at the moving academy. "Your construction method is going to require a larger license." Raiden started laughing. Kesso sat back down. Vela shouted from the platform that the Builders Club claimed first inspection rights. Illyra walked to my side. Her shoulder touched mine. "You were doing the calculating face again." "Yes." "How bad is it?" I watched an entire lecture hall adjust its foundation with a sound like distant thunder. "The club budget is too small." She laughed so hard she had to hold my arm. By sunset, the academy had stopped moving. No one had died. Old walls had straightened, cracked stairs had leveled, and the central tower stood perfectly upright. Orenz expanded our license. Raiden volunteered to help write the safety rules. Kesso corrected my entrance record in permanent ink without erasing the original F rank. I preferred that. Visible mistakes were useful. Bramall came to the club hall before dinner and placed 5 silver on the table. "The first bet," he said. "You already paid it." "I know. This is for the broken dog." He left before I could answer. I put the money into the club repair jar. Vela objected because apparently we now had accounting rules. I ignored her. The 7 of us who mattered most to the first week ate together in the rebuilt hall, though only some of us have begun on the same side. There was roast meat cut thin and crisp at the edges, potatoes with salt and herbs, hot bread, mushroom gravy, and honey cakes that Illyra once again classified as structural materials. The stone dog sat under the table with an empty plate. No one questioned it anymore. Outside, the academy rested on its newly adjusted foundations. Inside my pouch, I still kept one ordinary gray stone from the first 12. It had been the piece Bramall's wolf knocked into the mud on my first day. I had cleaned it, rebuilt it, watched it break, and rebuilt it again. I had arrived in this world at the bottom, with no money, no status, and a class everyone believed was useless. 5 days later, I had learned something simple. The world valued magical cores because everyone agreed stone needed permission to move. My class disagreed. I placed the old gray stone back into the veteran dog's spine. It clicked into the only position it wanted. Far below us, the living academy answered with one deep, satisfied click of its own.